Hey everybody, it's Double M from the Touch 'Em Up podcast, and I've got some very exciting news. I'm thrilled to announce my partnership with BetStamp and Sign Up Expert. Now you may be wondering what that is, but this is opening up an incredible opportunity for you to join some of my favorite sports books in order to get the best odds and new user offers depending on the event. Head over to my dedicated sign-up page, which I've linked in the description at signupexpert.com/touchemup. This will allow you to explore a selection of sportsbooks tailor-made to your specific region without you having to do any additional work. So without any further ado, if you're ready to support the Touch 'Em Up podcast just one step further and also catapult your sports betting experience at the same time, make sure to follow my Sign Up Expert link that's posted in the description of this video whenever you sign up to a new sportsbook. All right, everybody, we're back for the next installment of Double M's Bookie Beatdown, this time talking about UFC Abu Dhabi. And we're going to go over almost the entire card, but not every single fight because I just don't like some angles in terms of the betting side of some of the fights on the card. But we'll kick it off with the battle in the lightweight division between Rolando Bedoya and Jai Herbert. I see a lot of people on Herbert. I actually like the side of the underdog here in Bedoya. I think that he has a higher pace and he pushes a higher pace, especially in that second and third round. I think the first round, round and a half, it's going to be close. But I think the more powerful striker is Bedoya. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, he dropped Ilia Topuria. He rocked him. He hurt him. It's true. But then he got flatlined and his chin got sent to outer space with one of the nastiest knockouts you've ever seen in the UFC. And I like Bedoya's pace. I like his combinations. He puts multi-shot combinations together, not just one or two shots. And he keeps pushing forward for the entirety of the fight. Kind of got robbed in the Chaos Williams fight, and I think he's going to get a finish here. I like the money line at plus 120. I think it was plus 125 earlier today. But I think he finds a KO, and I would think it's better to play 2-3 than it is to play 1-2. I'm kind of the 2-3 guy when it comes to subs and KOs. So I like Bedoya KO 2-3 at plus 900. I think there's some value there because we've seen that although Jai Herbert is durable, he does get his chin cracked, he does get rocked, he does get hurt, and he has been knocked out multiple times inside the UFC. And I think Bedoya, with that pace, pressure, and multi-shot combos, I think he can kind of wear him down and then put him out of his misery later in the second or in the third round. So at plus 900, I think that there's a lot of value there. So I like the money line at plus 120 and then KO 2-3 plus 900. Up next, we've got an underdog, another one back-to-back with Jordan the Epidemic Vucenic. I like him over Garam. It's a bold pick because I know a lot of people are going to be on Garam at just under a 3-1 favorite. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big proponent of Garam Kutsteladze. I like the guy. I love his striking. He puts his combinations together well. He was clearly winning the fight against Elves Brenner, but if you go back and watch, if he didn't hurt Brenner at the end of that first round probably goes to Elves Brenner. And arguably it could have gone to him. He obviously won round 2, but even towards the end of round 2, Brenner was coming on. He was pushing the pace. I know it was on short notice, but I think Vucenic is going to come in here and shock a lot of people. I watched a lot of tape on this guy. I watched his sparring footage over on the CM Boxing channel, and I like this guy. I think he has decent striking. He's going to be at a striking disadvantage against Garam, but I think he's worth a stab on the money line at plus 180. He's got really good submissions, and he's competent enough on the feet to be capable of being competitive in order to open up the takedowns and the grappling exchanges and winning the scrambles. I think he wins scrambles against Garam. I think he goes for a lot of submissions. He's very active off of his back, and in the top position, he goes for triangles, goes for arm bars, goes for rear naked chokes, tries to win the scramble and end up on top. Won the first fight against Paul Hughes, came back in the second fight and ended up losing, kind of got dominated in that fight as well. So not the greatest look, but Paul Hughes is one of the brightest prospects outside of the UFC, so I don't think that's a terrible loss. And I think he can slow down Garam in the later rounds, in round 2 and round 3, and there's always a potential for the KO, but I think at plus 1,000, the sub 2-3 for Vucenic is probably the way I would target this fight from a prop perspective. I think the best way to play it is the money line, But I think sub 2-3, if he can slow down Garam and stay competitive enough to, get into a competitive striking battle for the first round and a half, I think he can slow down Garam and be able to win a scramble, be able to find a way to take his back and lock up that rear naked choke. So I like sub 2-3 for Vucenic at plus 1,000. It probably comes via a rear naked choke, but he's got arm bars, he's got triangles, he's got a lot of weapons in his bag of tricks. But yeah, I like sub 2-3 and the money line on the UFC newcomer in Jordan Vucenic. Up next, it's not plus money here. I'm not going to sit here and take too much time, but I can't play Menefield coming off that first round KO in like under 30 seconds against Carlos Ulberg. And Murzakanov is also undefeated, and he's a very competent striker, very good from southpaw, uses the jab, uses the check hook, finds the opening for the left cross. And I worry about the durability of Menefield coming off that KO, and I also don't think that Murzakanov is as good as his record would entail, and I think there's a chance that he gets tired in the second and third round and maybe Menefield cracks him and puts him down. So I think at minus 140, you're kind of getting this steal on that fight to end by KO. I think Menefield or Murzakanov can get a KO, and I think this is the best way to play it. I mean, I'm keeping it simple. It's not anything too crazy, but, as a parlay piece, I think fight ends by KO at minus 140 is the best way to target this fight, because I don't feel comfortable taking one side or the other, because I'm a big fan of Menefield, but I think Murzakanov definitely can land on the chin of Menefield and put him down. So fight ends by KO minus 140. That's my best bet when it comes to breaking down this fight. When it comes to Brenner versus Alvarez, I mean, we kind of already talked about it when we broke down Vucenic and Garam. I like Brenner KO 2-3. I know Alvarez is legit. He's long, he's tall, he's competent on the feet. He's going to be at a reach advantage and a height advantage, and he could easily clip and rock a guy like Brenner, who we've seen get hurt, wobbled, and stunned in almost all of his fights inside the UFC, aside from the Kenan Khrushchevsky fight. But I think Brenner is a builder. He's the type of fighter we've talked about before that I classify as a builder. He starts off kind of slow, but he builds and he builds and he builds and he builds. He survives the early adversity and comes back and tends to make the opponent wilt. He almost got a finish against, against Miktabek Uralbai in his last fight, and I think he could have got the finish there. It was very competitive, a lot of scrambles, wound up on top, didn't really succumb to positions, but he got rocked, he got wobbled, he got put in bad spots as well. But I think Brenner KO 2-3 at plus 1,100. It was at plus 1,200 or 1,300. I think that's definitely worth a stab here coming into this fight against Alvarez. He's going to have to weather the storm because Alvarez is dangerous early and he goes for a lot of submissions and he can hurt you on the feet. He's not a bad striker by any means, but I think Brenner will have the better cardio if he can survive getting hurt and wobbled and or survive the first round and a half, and then I think it's Brenner's fight to win, and I think he can slow down Alvarez, hurt him, and he probably gets a TKO more than a sub because I think Alvarez is the better jiu-jitsu practitioner out of the two, and I don't think Brenner would really want to play the jiu-jitsu game, whether it's offensively or defensively, against a guy like Joel Alvarez. So I like Brenner KO 2-3 at plus 1,100. I think it's kind of a no-brainer here, especially at that number. It opened up at plus 1,300. But I also like, if you're on the Alvarez side, I think it's a decent chance to take sub round 2 for Joel Alvarez at plus 900. I was looking at round 1. It wasn't bad. I think it was plus 400, plus 450. But I kind of like the round 2 sub for Alvarez because maybe he hurts and wobbles Brenner, and Brenner, jumps into a front headlock and gets subbed with a Darce or subbed with a guillotine because the guillotine is the best submission of Joel Alvarez. But if you're on the Alvarez side, I think Alvarez sub 2 at plus 900 is worth a stab. But I'm on the Brenner side. I'm on the underdog in Elves Brenner, and I like Brenner KO 2-3 for the reasons I already mentioned at plus 1,100. And that's exactly how I would play the fight. So I'm going with Brenner KO 2-3. But like I said, if you're on Alvarez, then I think sub round 2 is probably a good way to play it. All right, up next, another underdog, Lupita Godinez going up against Mackenzie Dern. I think Godinez is the easy play at plus 105. That's why I included the money line. It's not crazy, but it's plus money. She's coming in as the underdog. And I think she's better than Mackenzie Dern. As long as she can survive getting put in bad spots on the mat and getting subbed, which we saw her avoid in multiple occasions against Verna Jandrihova, who's coming off a second-round submission over Amanda Lemos. I think she can avoid getting subbed by Mackenzie Dern, and she's the much cleaner, much sharper, much more technical boxer. It's just you have to worry about the fight IQ of Godinez, because when she's supposed to strike, she wrestles, and when she should wrestle, she strikes, and she makes the fights a lot closer than they need to be, and I think she kind of gives fights away at certain points, so this isn't one that I'm super confident in, but I do think if there's any fight she can get a KO in. I played KO 2-3 for Godinez against Verna Jandrihova, and I'm going right back to the window here. KO 2-3 at plus 2,600 against Mackenzie Dern. Dern doesn't have defense on the feet. She walks forward. She throws pretty hard shots that are powerful, but Godinez is the much better fighter on the feet, much better boxer, much better defensively, much better footwork, and I think she can kind of piece up Mackenzie Dern and stuff the takedowns to where she might get another, what I like to call attritional TKO, where she hurts her, rocks her, bloodies her up, and the ref just kind of calls mercy. But Dern is tough. She's not going to quit, but I do think that she can kind of beat her up and land a bunch of combos and, stuff the takedowns and damage her enough to where the ref might stop it and jump in because of the damage that Dern's taking later on in the fight. So we have to worry about the fight IQ, because maybe she tries to grapple with the Jiu-Jitsu world champion and ends up in a bad position, but I think she can avoid getting subbed here. And if she's not getting subbed by Mackenzie Dern, I think it's a loopy Godinez fight all day. So Godinez on the money line plus 105 and Godinez KO 2-3 at plus 2,600 are my favorite bets and favorite plays when it comes to this fight. I think she can definitely get that attritional finish down the stretch as long as she can survive and avoid getting put into the bad grappling exchanges where Dern is going to be at an advantageous position. But that's what I like for this fight. Let's move on. Up next is the king of Snapdown City, the man on a 7-fight loss streak in Tony El Kukui Ferguson. Listen, I shouldn't put this in here because I was the guy who said Ferguson would never win another fight in the UFC after that beatdown from Gaethje, and so far it's been true, but he might be able to break it here against Michael Chiesa. Chiesa is very strong. He's very big for 170. He's a really solid grappler, not the best striker, but he's been subbed in multiple fights, and he's been subbed by Darce choke, which is coincidentally Tony Ferguson's best submission, aside from a triangle. And I think against Chiesa, there's no world where Chiesa should be a minus 600 or 700 favorite. I think the value in this fight is on Ferguson, quote-unquote value, because he's coming off 7 losses in a row, so it's not supremely confident. But if I'm going to play this fight, I'm going to play Tony Ferguson on the money line at plus 470. And I'm also going to play the sub at plus 1,200, 12-1. Like I said, he's been subbed in multiple fights. Got subbed with a Darce by Vicente Luque. Got subbed with a Darce by Kevin Holland. I think Ferguson can snatch up that neck if Chiesa kind of gets tagged on the feet with a bad shot and shoots a bad takedown. I think he can wrap up his neck. So at 12-1, there's a lot of value there because I think Ferguson's only win condition here is submission. He could rock Chiesa and hurt him, but I think if he rocks him, he probably drops him and then subs him. So I like sub at plus 1,200, but I also like sub 2-3 because I don't think it would come in the first round against a guy like Chiesa. I think he'd have to kind of weather the storm, make it competitive, and then it would come in the second or the third round, and you're getting a reverse number there at plus 2,100 for Ferguson to win by sub in the second and third round. I think the number is just way off, and I think the value is on Tony Ferguson by submission because I think that's kind of his only win condition, like I said. And even if he rocks him on the feet, he probably rocks him and causes Chiesa to panic wrestle, and then he can leave his neck there for a guillotine, a Darce. Maybe he takes his back, but I would say Darce if he wins by sub. So Ferguson moneyline plus 470, Ferguson sub plus 1,200, Ferguson sub 2-3 plus 1,200 or plus 2,100 at 21-1. I'm going with El Kukui here. I think he's the value side, even though he's coming off that 7-fight loss streak. But I think if he can beat anybody and sub anybody for the ghost of El Kukui that we have right now, it's probably a Michael Chiesa. So sub and sub 2-3 is kind of a no-brainer. So give me the boogeyman to come back and get a sub against Chiesa. All right, up next, Shara Bullet Magomedov over Michał Oleksiejczyk. I think the best play, Shara, round 1, round 2. I don't think this fight goes to decision. I know he got a KO in the 3rd round against Antonio Tricoli, which isn't a good look because Oleg Zaychuk is much, much better than a guy like Antonio Tricoli. But I think Shara is kind of a terrible matchup for Oleg Zaychuk. And I know Oleg Zaychuk dropped Kevin Holland and then ended up getting subbed. I think Shara is just going to beat up his body and maybe go with a head kick up top. He hurts him, he rocks him, jumps on him. And I kind of like, obviously, round 1, round 2, plus 120. If you're getting plus money on that, I think it's kind of a no-brainer, especially in this fight that I think is kind of a tee-up spot for Shara. But I like the Shara sub 1-2. He doesn't have any subs in his career. Neither did Joe Pyfer when he subbed Abdul Razak El Hassan. And I'm going with this idea that he hurts Oleg Zaychuk and he grabs his neck, either a guillotine, jumps to his back and goes for a rear naked choke. At plus 2,600, just like the Lupita TKO, you're begging me to play it at that number because a lot of the times when Oleg Zaychuk gets rocked, he ends up getting subbed. He hurts Kevin Holland, jumps on him, and gets put in an armbar, gets his arm broken. He gets rocked by Michel Pereira, gets subbed. I easily could see a similar situation here where Shara rocks him or hurts him to the body, causes him to kind of cower up, and then he grabs his neck and subs him. So at plus 2,600, man, I think it would come in the first 2 rounds, so I think it's kind of a no-brainer. Would it probably be a KO? Yeah, of course, but I don't think it's 2,600 type of unlikelihood that he gets a sub. So I like Shara sub 1-2 plus 2,600. Shara round 1, round 2 plus 120. And yeah, I think the sub is a sneaky play for this fight because I definitely can see a path against a fighter like Oleg Zaychuk. And now for the main event, I like Umar Nurmagomedov. I love Corey Sandhagen, and he can obviously outstrike Umar, but I think it's going to be a grappling showcase for a guy like Nurmagomedov. I think sub at plus 300 is absolutely ridiculous because even early in Corey Sandhagen's career, he got put in a terrible triangle armbar by Yuri Alcantara. How many people remember that guy in the bantamweight division? And he survived, but he almost got subbed. Gave up his back multiple times against a one-legged TJ Dillashaw. Took his back constantly. Didn't really threaten with submissions. He was actually the one who threatened with submissions, at least Corey, with that flying knee to the inverted triangle. But he gave up his back. And you give up your back against a guy like Umar Nurmagomedov, he's going to take you down. He's going to put his hooks in, and he's probably going to get a rear naked choke. Now, do I think Corey knows that the submission defense needs to be on point? Yeah, I do. But I also think he's kind of not going to have much of a choice once Umar gets him to the ground. And he's got very good offensive wrestling, but this is the problem. People seem to coagulate offensive and defensive wrestling into the same thing, and it's just not like that. He has really good offensive wrestling now against guys who don't really know how to stuff takedowns in Marlon Chito Vera and Rob Font, but he doesn't have good defensive wrestling. We haven't seen the defensive wrestling from Sandhagen. We've seen him give up his back. We saw him get subbed in the first round by Aljamain Sterling and put to sleep with a rear naked choke. He defended it a couple times and then got subbed. I think if Umar gets his back, it's probably in the first 3 rounds. So I like Umar sub plus 300, Umar sub 123 plus 430, and I also kind of like sub 23 because I could easily see it coming in the first round, but maybe he wears him out, tires him out, and he gets takedowns towards the end of the first round, so it goes into 2 and 3, and then I like sub 2-3 at plus 800. To get double the value, yes, it's 1 less round, but it could easily come in the first round, but I think it probably comes in round 2 or round 3. And Umar's never been to the 4th and 5th, so I would think those rounds would more favor Corey Sandhagen, and probably it would mean that the fight took place more on the feet than the grappling, because I don't think that Corey's going to be able to survive on the ground against a grappler the level of a Umar Nurmagomedov. This is a big step up for Umar, but one that I think he passes with flying colors. I think he gets the takedowns. I think he finds the back of Sandhagen, and I think he subs him with a rear naked choke. So Umar sub plus 300, sub 123 plus 430, sub 23 plus 800. Those are my best plays for UFC Saudi Arabia, UFC Abu Dhabi. UFC Abu Dhabi. Nurmagomedov versus Sandhagen or Sandhagen versus Nurmagomedov. Let's make some money this weekend, baby, and let's make these bookies pay with this Bookie Beatdown. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and lock up a rear naked choke on the notification bell.